this little notebook than I thought. Of course, we're nearing the end of the Exodus and getting close to the promised land, land of milk and honey. As we read and travel with the Israelites, and we're up into the second generation, because the first ones that left out of Egypt have probably about all passed away by now after a period of 40 years. So it's going to be chapter 21. And we'll start in verse 10. And if you'll remember, last week we finished up at the brass serpent, when our travelers, the Israelites, had disobeyed God again to some degree, and they were punished with fiery serpents. And the only way they could survive that bite of death was to look upon the brazen serpent that Moses put up on a pole for them to look at. And they were only saved from that bite of the fiery serpent by their faith, and the fact that they looked up, and faith alone is what saved them from that bite. They couldn't look up, it wasn't anything they could do or anything like that. It was totally by their faith in the fact that they would look up at that brazen serpent and they were saved. So, as we finish up that part of the book of Numbers, chapter 21, I'll start in verse 10. I'm going to read 10 through 16, and then we'll see what we got. All right, this title of this little section is The Feet of Sihon and Og. So, of course, if we're moving forward, moving north with the Israelites, remember they've had to circumvent the territory of Edom, and they can't take the King's Highway, which would have been right into the heart of the Promised Land. They're going to have to go to the east and start traveling north, and they're going around Edom in the process. And we mentioned Edom, descendants of Esau. That's their cousins, that's their family. And if we see there, instead of just waging war, they were directed to go around it. And you'll notice as we move forward with the Israelites, as they're going into the Promised Land and traveling northward, these nations that they defeat, they're not going to be directly the descendants, or not descendants, but like kin, family, cousins. You're going to find out that the Amorites are not kin to them, not like Esau, not like Esau was a distant, like a brother to Jacob. Of course, these are descendants of Jacob that are God's people are moving up. And we're going to see up in Bashan, where we're going to read this King Og is, he is not a close relative of the Israelites either, as we're moving up through here. And don't be surprised when we see these battles are waged at what God tells them they're to do. These battles are not to be just taken lightly. God has given them specific orders in what they are to do as they to move forward. And don't be surprised at the outcome of some of this. But just remember that God has a reason for everything that goes on as they're moving forward there. And the main thing is they need to follow what God instructs them to do to the T. Because we know what happens when they don't. It ends up with going in the wrong direction or wandering around in the wilderness for 40 years, just like they did at Kadesh Barnea when God sent them into the Promised Land to spy out and see what was going. And they got up there and they got scared and they come back and 10 out of 12 gave a bad report, and that's why we're at where we're now. It took 40 years for these people to get where they're at now, or 38. All right, so they will get specific instructions from God as they move forward into this Promised Land, and that's what we're going to read. All right, so, and the children of Israel set forward and pitched in Oboth, and they journeyed from Oboth and pitched at Abram in the wilderness, which is before Moab, toward the sun rising. So they're going up around Edom, and we're coming into Moab. We're heading north with the Israelites here, and this is east of the Dead Sea as we're moving forward. From thence they removed and pitched the valley of Zered. From thence they removed and pitched on the other side of Arnon, which is in the wilderness that come out of the coast of the Amorites. So now we're heading up through there and we're getting close to the Amorites. And now the Amorites are not going to be close cousins of these Israelites like the Edomites were. For Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. All right, and if I remember right, just a little bit of history in here, the Moabites and, trying to remember the other, but if you'll remember back when Lot fled Sodom, and he fled to that little next town. You know, he went to the town. God told him to flee to the mountains. He went to the next town. Of course, it was just him and his daughters that ended up there, and he had descendants through that whole story. You remember, I don't have to go into all the details. But this is where some of these people are coming from. They're descendants of Lot, these Moabites. All right, so, you know, it's all like one big family, but it gets more distant as you go, because Lot, of course, was the nephew of Abraham. And Abraham, Isaac, and then Isaac was the father of Jacob, and Jacob is the father of these people, you know, after, you know, there's his descendants after 400 years. So remember that kind of as you're going through here, you know. So they shouldn't be a real fight with the Moabites because they're kind of distant, but we'll see what happens. Wherefore it is said in the book of the wars of the Lord, what he did in the Red Sea and the brooks of Arnon, and at the stream of the brooks that goeth down upon the dwelling of Ar and lieth upon the border of Moab. So you got a river, it runs from east to west, runs into the Dead Sea here. It's kind of a border. As we go through periods of the Old Testament, that river there is always going to be a border of some sort. For future reference, it'll be the border between Reuben and Manasseh. I think we've already read, if not, I'm getting the cart before the horse, but I think we talked about this already earlier in the book of Numbers, where they wanted to stop over here in this eastern part of the Dead Sea, Reuben, the tribes of Reuben and Manasseh, because the grazing looked so good over there. If you'll remember, the grazing looked real good. And they're like, well, we want to just stop here. But Moses said, nay, you can't do this, because once you settle over here, you're not going to come over here and help us finish the job on the other side of the Dead Sea. So they made an agreement. They make an agreement, and they say, we will go with the rest of our family into that land, but we eventually want to come back here. And this little river is going to be part of the border between the half tribe of Manasseh and Reuben, and you can look at it in a future map. So this is like a dividing line in this area, all right? And this book of wars, let me read 16. And from thence they went to Beer, that is the well whereof the Lord spake unto Moses, gather the people together, and I will give them water. So here's where God's going to give them some water. And, of course, this is after the fact that Moses had done got mad and struck a rock. Now he's going to suffer the consequences. But this book of wars may be a collection of war songs, not really described or we know for certain. And the mention of the Red Sea, just like what went on at the Red Sea, of course, is a miracle. So, you know, moving forward, God is telling them things are going to happen here. It's going to be miracles. You may look like you can't defeat the enemy that's coming up here, but don't forget, they've been things that happened in the past that God overcame. So, and of course, they're going on north. Now I'm going to read 17 through 20. Then Israel sang this song, Spring up, O well, sing ye unto it. The princes digged the well, and the nobles of the people digged it by the direction of the lawgiver. That's Moses with their staves. And from the wilderness they went to Mattanah. And from Mattanah to Nathael, and from Nathael to Bamoth. All right, I forgot 21 more. And from Bamoth in the valley, that is the country of Moab, to the top of Pisgah, which looks toward Jeshimon. And it's easy to get confused. This Mount Pisgah, there's going to be a lot of things that happen from this side of the Dead Sea, where this Mount Pisgah, and it's not just, Mount Pisgah is not just like a big sharp pointed mountain there when you look on this where this part is. It is more like a long ridge, and there are cities placed along the bottom of this long ridge. And a lot of these places like Nebo and some of the others, Moses is going to see the promised land. I think it was from Nebo. Sometimes I get stuff confused here. But anyway, he's up on this ridge, this giant ridge, and these different places but they're high points in which you'll see in the future, and we're reading, they'll go up to these high places along this ridge, and they can see what's going on west toward the Dead Sea in there. And that's just like a big, long place to viewpoint. And these different cities are scattered along this plain down next to the Dead Sea. So I'm just trying to give you a visual picture of what's going on. It's not like just a pointed mountain and you just go to Pisgah. It's like a long mountain ridge is what it is. So, and also names of places gets confusing too, because as you read, as you've noticed some of these names of some places through the Bible, starting to have one name, and then you'll read somewhere and you're like, well, I thought that this happened here, but it's a different name. It changes, and don't be confused by that. Sometimes it takes more in-depth study to get that lined up in your head, and it takes somebody with a lot more mental capacity than me to keep that filed away with them names, actually. But you can use places even now. Man's got a habit of changing the name of towns and cities over time, and it can get you confused as you move on. But I'm just trying to give you some explanation somewhat here, because you use like Moscow, St. Petersburg and stuff changes names over time, and that even happens here in the Old Testament. So don't let that confuse you. But we're still just remembering we're heading north, and we're east of the Dead Sea, and we're looking that way right now. All right. Song of praise for water and victories in the future is what that was, what we just read about that. They're singing for that. And I'm going to read 21 through 26. Let me pass through thy land. We will not, 21. And Israel sent messengers unto Sihon, king of the Amorites. So we're down here at this Moabite kingdom. And down here at this river, at this area, about to cross in, we got a border between Moab and where the Amorites are. And Sihon is the king of the Amorites. And if I remember right, Sihon has already conquered the Moabites here in the not too distant past. So he's kind of got control over that area as well. And so they're petitioning him to go through this land, just like they done to the Edomites. They wanted to go through that land, but they're going to be met with a different response here. So they've sent the messengers unto Sihon, and they say, let us pass through thy land. We will not turn into the fields or into the vineyards. We will not drink of the waters of the well, but we will go along by the king's highway until we be past thy borders. And Sihon would not suffer Israel to pass through his border. But Sihon gathered all his people together and went out of Israel into the wilderness, and he came to Jahaz and fought against Israel. All right, and Israel smote him with the edge of the sword and possessed his land from Arnon unto Jabbok, even unto the children of Ammon, for the border of the children of Ammon was strong. All right, so his response was not like that of Edom. They at least told them to go around if they could not pass through. He immediately comes out and attacks, is what he does with his people. He comes out and attacks. All right. Of course, we're going to see here, I'm going to read, they're going to be victorious, and, yeah, I already said that. So let me read 27 through 30. Oh, wait a minute, 26, I didn't read it. For Heshbon was the city of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab and taken all his land out of his hand, even unto Arnon. So like I told you, he was the king. Sihon's the king, and already defeated the Moabites, so he's in charge of that part. Wherefore, verse 27, wherefore they that speak in Proverbs say, come into Heshbon, let the city of Sihon be built and prepared. For there is a fire gone out of Heshbon, a flame from the city of Sihon. It hath consumed Ar of Moab and the lords of the high places of Arnon. Woe unto thee, Moab, thou art undone, O people of Chemosh. he that hath given his sons that escaped and his daughters into captivity unto Sihon, king of the Amorites. This has been they're singing about this. This is about this verse is addressing the fact that Moabites have been defeated by the Amorites. And you got to remember, the Israelites are victorious at this point. They've beat Sihon, the king of the Amorites, because he has already beaten the Moabites. So this is like a big deal to them. God has delivered them one powerful king. They have defeated him. With God's help, here's what we're getting at. So let me get on to 30. We have shot at them, Heshbon is perished, even unto Dibon, and we have laid them waste, even unto Nopah, which reacheth unto Medeba. All right. So, like I said, they are victorious. And there's more than just one place in this. You're going to find out as we read forward, when they defeat Og, he's king over there. It's got 80 cities. It's going to be like 60 cities in that area. So you've got pockets of people everywhere. So that's a lot of fighting and a lot for them to overcome as they go through. And you got to remember too, we're going to see in the chapters coming up when Balaam's up on the mount trying to give Balak his good blessing. There's still a great population of these, because Balaam's going to tell him he'll look from one place and there's still a big population of people. They have not dwindled over time. They're still big. They're powerful. But even when you're a mobile force going to move forward and attack these high-walled cities and stuff, it's not an easy task to do that they're going to be faced with. So they got to have God's help with them as they move through. 31 through 35. Thus Israel dwelled in the land of the Amorites because of their defeat. He attacks, they win. And Moses sent to spy out Jazer, and they took the villages thereof and drove out the Amorites that were there. So even now they've won that big battle, they've still got people to drive out of these other areas as well. And they turned and went up by the way of Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, went out against them, he and all his people, to the battle of Edrei. All right. I'm purposely leaving out some of the details that we could read about if we turned over to Deuteronomy. I'm going to save some of this stuff, these details, for when we read through Deuteronomy to make it a little more interesting, because Moses in the book of Deuteronomy is going to give about 3 different sermons, I guess, or accounts of what happened in the Exodus if we move forward. But I'm going to bounce ahead here in a few minutes in the verses coming up to deal with this defeat of Og and why he was such a fearsome opponent as they go into this land in the northern part of the promised land. All right. So I'm reading 31 through 35, and went up Bashan. All right, we're heading north of Bashan. King Og and Og, the king of Bashan, went out against them, he and all his people, to the battle of Edrei. 34. And the Lord said unto Moses, fear him not. Now, he's worth fearing. I mean, for anybody naturally to look at it, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But God's telling him, don't be afraid this time. For I have delivered him unto thy hand, and all his people and his land, and thou shalt do him as thou didst unto Sihon, king of the Amorites, which dwelled at Heshbon. So they smote him and his sons and all his people until there were none left him alive, and they possessed his land. All right. Why did God warn him not to be afraid of Og? I'm going to turn over to Deuteronomy chapter 3 and verse 11 is what I've got numbered here. And we'll see why he might be a formidable force. Chapter 3, verse 11. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of giants. Behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron. Is it not in Rabbath of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth of it, after the cubit of a man. So that turns out, if you figure that's about 13 feet by 6 feet or something like that. So he was a very large man, or whatever he was. I can't say exactly what he was. There's a lot of different theories on that, different opinions, I guess. But one thing I can tell you, he's big, because if his bed's that big, he's a big person. And And he was a fearsome opponent, but God said not to fear him. And they were victorious over him. And if we move forward in Deuteronomy, we might get more details about that whole battle. All right. Reuben, I think I done that, 35. Now, we're up to chapter 22. All right, we're going to meet a interesting character here in chapter 22. We're going to meet, two of them really, well, the three along the trail. We're going to meet Balaam, he is known locally as a prophet, of course. We're going to find out that the local kings there are going to seek him out for blessings in the future, and because they're getting worried about what's coming north. We're going to find another king because he's heard the news by now. There's an army on the march. It's coming your way, and they've defeated everybody in their path so far. So he's going to be worried about that. He's going to seek out this Balaam character, who ends up being, evidently he's got some kind of a history, or he's got, well, he have a history of it, but he's got a reputation for being a prophet of some sort, because they're going to this king's going to seek a blessing from him to be victorious over this army that's marching north, of course, which is the Israelites. Some things that come to me about this Balaam, I kind of made some notes here. He's a prophet of some unknown origin, if we're going to find out if we read about him. And don't be surprised, I think he's more of an evil origin. If you'll remember about when Saul goes to see the witch at Endor and wanting to see what's going to happen. I forget the exact circumstance, but Samuel shows up. I think that is not what the plan was going to be. But anyway, I don't think that witch I think she was an evil person to some degree or something like that. And I think this Balaam is like this to some degree too, kind of just like a man, because we're going to read in these chapters coming up that when he looks out over that population of those Israelites in that valley from where he's perched up on this high place, he's going to think, man, I wished I was blessed like these people. So I think he realizes what his situation is too. And another reason I think he's of evil origin, he really don't seem that stunned when the donkey talks to him. We're going to read about that too. If a donkey started talking to me, I'm going in the opposite direction, y'all. I'm leaving, there ain't no doubt about it. But this man stood here and had this conversation here. So I think if it's not some kind of evil communication, with something that I don't know about, because he didn't seem that stunned from what this was going on. Of course, God and the angel he sent there straight was the purpose of all this. But with that being said, he's going to be put in the position as this king seeks out this prophecy from him, where he could have, God tells him what he can do. He can go and talk to this king, but he could have always chosen to leave town and never went there too. He could have chosen to never even mess with this king. So there again, he's been forewarned, and he's having communication with God at this point in time. And unfortunately for this man, Balaam, even into the future, his end is not a good ending. So all I see from him, through everything I read about him, is not godly in nature, but I think he's an evil person to some degree. He's, bad is what I want to say, bad. And of course, he never makes the right decision when he didn't have to go to these high places. He didn't have to go see this king. He could have went to the opposite direction, but he chose to do this, and eventually his end is his demise. It comes in a bad way. But anyway, so I'm going to read verse 1, chapter 22. And the children of Israel set forward and pitched in the plains of Moab on this side of Jordan by Jericho. All right. Israel camped on the east side of Jordan River across from Jericho in the plain of Moab. Pretty common. I don't have much else to put on that. Now I'm going to 2 through 4. Here we're going to meet Balak. And Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was sore afraid of the people, because they were many. And Moab was distressed because of the children of Israel. And maybe they didn't even have nothing to worry about here, really, because they're distant relatives, like I told you. And God didn't go through and just wipe out the Edomites at this time. So maybe this had, if they'd let the people go through, maybe this would have never happened, of what's about to happen. None of this would have happened. But anyway, we're going to see. So Moab was distressed because the children of Israel, this big army is marching through, and they've done whipped the Amorites, and they've been victorious. And Moab said unto the elders of Midian. Now this Moab and Midian, I believe at this point in time was typically enemies to some degree. But when faced with an army coming at them, they're eager to make an alliance with somebody that they typically don't get along with. So when the thoughts of getting wiped off the face of the earth or you being defeated, it convinces them to maybe they need to make an alliance, otherwise they wouldn't have. So in Midian, we've read about that over and over. They're more like a shepherd community or territory down there. Now shall this company lick all that are round about us? The ox licketh up the grass of the field. And Balak, the son of Zippor, was king of the Moabites at that time. All right. So Balak, ruler of Moab, Moab and Midian, traditional enemies, and fear of God is causing them to partner up. Was my notes on that I got. I'm going to read 5 through 7. He sent messengers, therefore, unto Balaam, the son of Beor of Pethor, which is by the river of the land of the children of his people, to call him, saying, Behold, there is people come out from Egypt. Behold, they are covered the face of the earth, and they abide over against me. So he's worried. A lot of these Israelites, a big population of these Israelites. He's aware of that. Somehow he's found that out. He knows it. And he sent for this Balaam, who lives north in Syria. It's what we would call Syria now. And if you think about that, that is also the land where Abraham first settled when he left the Chaldees before he went south. Remember, that's where his father passed away. They didn't go all the way like they were supposed to. They left there, and he brought his father, and he brought Lot and some other stuff, and somewhat disobeyed God, I think, and he stopped up there and lived for a while till his father passed away. So evidently there may be some descendants in that region. I don't know, but needless to say, this Balaam's from in that area, the northern part. All right, and doesn't say that. So let me see if I read that. Sent messengers to come now to pray. Oh yeah, here he is. Balak's talking to him. He goes, Balaam. He sent for Balaam, and in verse 6, Come now, therefore, I pray thee, curse me this people, for they are too mighty for me. Peradventure I shall prevail, that we may smite them, and that I may drive them out of the land. For I wot that he whom thou blessed is blessed, and he whom that curseth is cursed. So this Balaam must have that reputation, like I told you earlier. This king is saying, this is why I'm calling on you. When you make these predictions and so forth, or however you want to interpret these call for blessings, etc. Evidently, Balaam has been pretty productive and accurate in whatever it is. I think he's more of a false prophet, in my opinion. I think he's just really good at what he does, is what I think. And you can see that even today. Some people, a fortune teller, and they kind of tell you vague things that make you think you're knowing what the future is going to be. You can read up this on yourself. I think a lot of this is probably what Balaam is. I think he's just like a really good fortune teller, because he's going to be administered by God here in a little bit. Or he's going to hear from God personally in a little bit about these people that he's supposed to be cursing. But anyway, verse 7. And the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the rewards of divination in their hand, and they came unto Balaam and spake unto him the words of Balak. There we go. You can, if nothing else, you can buy good fortune. To me, that's what this is. If you got lots of money and You're empowered this time, come up with a lot of rewards and money, and you can just buy a fortune from somebody like Balaam. I mean, does that really sound to me like a legitimate person who's telling the future? Did you buy it, pay them for it like that? No, it sounds like to me like something you see today with the fake. All right, verse 8. And he said unto them, Lodge here this night, and I will bring you word again, as the Lord shall speak unto me. And the princes of Moab abode with Balaam. So, this to me would be just another generic answer. Well, at first, I'm thinking like, well, maybe he's really talking to God. I think what he tells everybody this probably. We don't know that. The Bible don't say specifically, but he's going to get an answer from God, whether his legitimate request is legitimate or not. And because what would you going if you had people say, well, I'll talk to God and see what he's going to say. I'll tell you tomorrow. So you've got all night to cook up whatever kind of answer it is you're going to have. But he ain't even going to have to make an answer at this time. He's going to get one. All right, I'm going to read 9 through 12. And God came unto Balaam and said, What men are these with thee? And God already knows who these people are. He's asking him a question to get an answer back from him. See if he'll admit to what these people are. All right. And Balaam said unto God, Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab, hath sent unto me, saying, Behold, there is a people come out of Egypt, which cover the face of the earth. Come now, curse me them, peradventure I shall be able to overcome them and drive them out. And God said unto Balaam, Thou wilt not go with them, thou shalt not curse the people, for they are blessed. All right. Just like the spies at Kadesh Barnea, the first order of business, here first thing God tells them, don't go. You got no business making this curse, trying to cook this up. So I'll leave it at that. We got, 12. Let me right here. And then we'll pick up next week because we're going to continue with Balaam. And Balaam is going to go with them eventually, even though God told him not to. And it's going to continue on this deal with Balaam. Make my notes there. Because number one, he didn't do what God told him here in this verse. He just need not go in the first place. So I'll leave it at that. And we'll get back with Balaam next week. And I'm going to dismiss us with a prayer. Dear God, I thank you for this day, Lord. Thank you for being with us in your house today, God. I thank you for your many blessings, and pray for those that can't be with us today, God, and the sickness and the ones that's lost loved ones, God. I pray for them, Lord. Pray that you bless them, Lord. I pray that you bless each person that's in here listening today, God, as we go through the week. And I hope we can take something we read in your word today, God, and apply it to our lives as we go through the week, Lord. I just thank you for everything. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.